Hello and welcome to today's video. Today is my third update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project. This was started by Alexy a long time ago. You probably heard that a million times by now because if you probably are watching this video, that means that you probably binge watch a whole bunch of other people do this project because it's so fun to watch. Anyways, all the information is listed in the description box and I think I have a pretty eventful update today, so why don't we go ahead and get into it. Okay, as we get started today, I have one rule update that I'm gonna do, and then we're gonna start with the more non-eventful items, go into the more eventful pans and roll-ins, and then I'll show you looks at the end of that. But first of all, I've been thinking about this since the very first update that I put up on this channel. So many of you gave me so much good feedback, so many good suggestions have been thrown my way, and I think I don't want to deviate from the original plan of this too much, but I think I'm gonna add one rule in. So far the way I roll out eyeshadows is that I have two rules. I can hit pan on them or I can use them that shadow 20 times and then choose to roll it out, right? If you saw my last update, I feel like this project is successful for me. I've hit pan on more eyeshadow than I ever anticipated, especially this early in the year. At the same time, I struggle with getting a little bit bored. I'm not someone who historically repeats a lot of looks, and so I was mentioning that in my last video, and so many of you gave me really good advice. And also I'm thinking to myself, like, I have some eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I don't even have I didn't have in my spreadsheet because I knew I wasn't really comfortable hitting pan on them. So I think I'm gonna add a rule today that we'll test out for a while, and I think it will help me and it'll open up my eyeshadow, like my entire eyeshadow collection. So again, my rules for this project are I can hit pan on the shadow, I can use the shadow 20 times and choose to roll it out, or I can reach for the entire palette 25 times. So if I'm like there, for example, the first palette that I'm gonna show you today, newer to me, I'm enjoying the shade. I definitely wanna work on the shade more, but at the same time, this palette's so new to me that I wanna be able to use other shades in it. It's so beautiful. And if I end up using this 25 times instead of using that one shade 20 times, I think I would feel okay with that. And I would be okay rotating out eyeshadow palettes that way. Now I still really want to hit pan on shades, so this isn't going to turn into a strictly usage kind of project, but I think I want to try out that rule for a little bit. I hope that makes sense. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about this palette. This was a shade that I rolled in last update. This is from the Solmani palette. Like I said, new palette to me. I've actually only worn this shade 4 times since rolling it into the project. I am wearing it today. It is definitely an orange shade. It's got a little bit of a yellow mustardy kind of base to it, and hopefully you'll see that I think we have a little bit of use showing in it. I know in person there's like a little bit of a dip until I went to swatch it on my hand today, but the swatch is right here. Definitely like a mac and cheese, kind of a orangey, like a Kraft mac and cheese kind of shade. And I definitely want to get more use out of that shade in particular, but at the same time, spring is just getting here in Sweden. We don't even have leaves on trees yet, and I'm not quite drawn to these super warm shades. So I think for myself, like, rather than keeping the shade in and making myself reach for that one shade 20 times or to hit pan on it, it would be so much more fun to be able to allow myself to play with the purple or like these kind of like topper shades up here. So if I change my rule to like let myself reach for this palette 25 times, then I think I'm gonna be happier in the long run with my like rotation and with the fact that I'm getting to use other shades in these beautiful palettes. So yeah, we're gonna try that out, but so far 4 uses, no real progress in this one. All right, moving into the second shade. Also, just a reminder, I am working on 6 shades in this project so far. This next palette is my Modern Renaissance palette. I rolled this in as well last update, and I have used this one 12 times. Now, this is one that I actually do foresee myself really wanting to use this shade until I hit pan. I really like the shade. It's beautiful. Swatched right here. And at the intro, it looked a little used, but still very, like, this palette didn't look like it looked pretty new for how old it is. So today we have a little bit of a dip going. Now I do apply this with my finger, so it's not always like, I feel like I use like a lot of the top layer versus like kind of narrowing in on one part of the shadow. So like for this one, these pans over here, I was using very dense brushes, and this one, because I use my finger, I think it's gonna go more slowly, but I do think that when I hit pan, the pan will probably be a little bit bigger than like normal. So I actually really enjoy having the shade in. I'm wearing it today, kind of tapped really lightly over that Sol from the Solmani palette shade. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. Glad to have it in the project. Even though it is a more warm tone color, I feel like it's also super neutral and goes with a lot. So this one's not kind of bothersome at all. I've reached for it a good bit, even though I rolled it in last update. I feel like 12 uses, especially for the fact that this past month I was working on my spring makeup series. If you haven't checked that out, please do. It was a lot of fun putting together different spring looks, and we have a pink video, a purple video, pastels, peaches, and yeah, so I was doing a lot of other videos trying to get those done, and I wasn't wearing my Panthers eyeshadow shades as much as I want to, or as much as I typically do. So 12 times this month, for the fact that all of that was going on, is pretty dang good in my opinion. All right, moving into my Lorac Pro 3 palette. This one was one that I rolled in at the beginning of this project, hit pan, and then last update ended up rolling in another shade from this project, or from this palette. So the shade I'm working on, Truffle, is a little bit harder of a shade to use. It is right here. It's technically kind of more of a satin, so I can't use it in my brows like I was using the Modern Renaissance shade in the past, and yeah, I don't want shiny brows. So this one's kind of been reserved. It blends out so well in the outer corner to like deepen up a look. So good for that. I've really been enjoying that. And then today I do kind of have it on really lightly as like a liner. And I've used this one, I think it's like, let me check, 16 times. And so we have a little bit of a dip in it today. But again, I switch my brush shape up quite a bit, and sometimes it will be a nice flat liner brush, and sometimes it'll be a fluffy blending brush. So when I start to get like a good dip going, then I'll go in with a fluffy brush and lose that dip. But I do think that this is another shade that I see myself keeping in until I hit pan on it. I really am enjoying the shade. It's really nice, kind of more cool tone, kind of deepening shade. Really, really like it. And I actually, this palette and the Modern Renaissance, I would not be mad if it frequently showed up in this project, because I would like for those two, those are probably some of the oldest palettes in my collection. I would like for them to look really loved and really abused and used, because I actually really do really enjoy both of those palettes. So also I have a bonus pan in this palette. I almost forgot to mention it. I did hit pan in this shade up here, and I actually had been working on it for like since the beginning of this project. I was using this as a lid setting shade, and I ended up hitting pan on canvas quicker than I hit pan on Blanc here. I don't know how that happened, because this one I was using kind of more of, but I think it was like this, maybe I had to build up the color on this one a little bit more, so maybe I was using it a little bit heavier than I thought. But also when I look at this pan, the dip in it is like definitely more evenly, like a fluffier brush was used. So yeah, I'm so excited to have a little bonus pan in this palette, and yeah, almost forgot to mention that. Okay, palette number 4, the Sultry palette. Now I said when I rolled this one in that I was a little bit nervous using this shade to hit pan on it, because this palette's discontinued. I have those weird voices in the back of my head that end up vocalizing a little discomfort when it comes to this palette, because I know that I can't replace it if I fall in love with it. I love it, but I don't know, I'm rambling. But I was working on the shade Steampunk, and it is swatched right here. Beautiful kind of bronzy gold. I really fell in love with this shade as I started using it more and more in this project. I realized it's so versatile. You can kind of blend it out, make it look a little bit more, use it a little bit more lightly. It looks more gold, and then I love it paired with cool tones, and it also can kind of be built up more like this and look more bronzy. I really, really, really fell in love with this shade so much. So I have officially today used it 20 times, and I'm going to end up rolling it out, even though I do not have pan on it yet. Hopefully you can see that we did get a little bit of a dip going in it, but I use this shade so lightly because as I fell in love with it, I was like, okay, just a little, okay, just a little. Like I just found myself fighting the idea of using it like deeply enough to hit pan. So I made the decision today that I'm gonna roll it out of the project. But I hope to roll in this palette again, because this is one of those palettes in my collection that I'm like, I would love to use this palette 25 times, not just that one shade 20 times. So rolling this one out today. Okay, palette number 5 is another one that I'm gonna roll out today, because I've also hit 20 uses on it. Such a good palette. This is the night and day palette. Now, my intro photos look very different than it does now, because I ended up dropping this palette. I had to repress it, and then I used, in the little jar that I repressed it in, I used the rest of the product up out of there. And then today we have a little bit of usage, but honestly, it took so long to use the like product in that little jar that I only got to use it out of here probably about 7 times. But it's got a little usage, such a good transition shade. I honestly reached for this so much, and I actually really enjoy this palette so much that I ended up using some other shades in here too. I'll show you those in a minute, but yeah, totally enjoyed this shade. A little bit sad to be rolling it out, but at the same time, my color story last month was a little bit boring, and I would honestly just reach for this shade anyway. So I feel like, you know what, let's mix it up. Let's go ahead, roll something new in, and if I end up reaching for this palette organically on my own, that's fine. Also, I almost forgot to mention that is that shade from the Night and Day palette, and then the next shade right beside it is the last one I'm going to talk about. This is Colourpop Truly Madly Deeply. This shade has been in since the beginning of this project. Took me forever. Actually, let me just consult my notes and tell you exactly how many times I used this. Okay, as of today, I've used this shade 44 times, and it's a baby pan, but it's there, and I'm totally gonna count it. So we will also be rolling this shade out today too. All right, a quick recap as we roll in items. I have 3 items staying in this project. These are the 3 shades right there. And we're rolling out 3 items right here. So I'm gonna pull up my little random number generator. So historically in this project, I have a big spreadsheet that I had a bunch of shades listed in, but because I added that new rule, I'm gonna open up my entire collection. I have 33 palettes with me here. So we're gonna generate 1 to 33, and I'll pick those 3 palettes out, and then from there, I'll pick a shade from those palettes, but let's go ahead and pick the 3 palettes, and then we'll pick the actual shades. So the first one will be number 14, then we have 25, and 3. Okay, the first palette that I randomized is my Marvelous Mauves palette. I'm kind of excited / nervous for this one. 5-pan palette here, so let's randomize 1 through 5. And I have the shade 4, which is the shade here, and I think this one's called Rosy. Nice. I'm kind of glad I got something a little bit deeper versus something a little lighter, just because I can kind of use this a little bit. I think I can use this in my crease and to deepen up my outer corner. So this one will be a really nice addition. Honestly, I just didn't really feel like working on this one. I think I would have been happy with any of the other ones, but this one on me is very, very light. So that'll be a really nice little addition there. I really like that. Okay, the second palette I'm rolling in is another really colorful option. This is the Profusion Emeralds palette, 10-pan palette here. So let's see, number 7. Let me get it to focus, but shade number 7 is this shade right here. Very bright, hot, kind of green shade, very bright green shade. Honestly, really nice shade for spring. I don't normally wear or think to reach for this palette for that shade, but I think that will be so fun to try to incorporate. Initially, as I think about it, I feel a little bit stumped, but maybe I can figure out some pops of color, and then also I think it would be a fun all over the lid color. So I really am excited to kind of reach for this one too. And then the last palette rolling into this project is my mini Lila palette, another 5-pan palette. So I'm gonna generate another number, and we have 4 again, which is this gold shade down here. I do like it, but it's so similar to the Modern Renaissance shade. Yeah, no, they're almost identical. Let me re-roll for this one, and it gave me 3. So that's the shade right here, right beside it. This is Raisin. Definitely a more purpley kind of tone shade. Very similar also to this one, but I think they're slightly different enough. Okay, I feel better about working on Raisin versus just a second gold that looks exactly like the Primavera shade. So I feel good about that. But yeah, this is going to be our new color story right here. I'm actually kind of excited for it, feeling a little bit intimidated. As of this moment, I think I rolled in the 6th shade at the second update because I was like, okay, I don't have that much color variation. I have a lot of neutrals. And right now I'm like, maybe 6 shades is too much, but we're gonna go for it because like I said, I do have that cushion of rolling a palette out for usage only. So I may end up doing that. But what an exciting update. I know last update I was complaining about how just neutral this color story is. And then today we got some color. I'm feeling good about it. So I'm realizing that I've been yammering in this video and I haven't even gotten to the looks yet. So let's quickly go over some looks. I'm gonna talk about the Colourpop Truly Madly Deeply palette first. It's easier for me to discuss transition shades because they typically kind of ground the look and they make me decide if it's gonna be a warm tone look or a cool tone look that day. So this one I have 3 different looks with. I ended up doing the same look quite a bit with this. I ended up using this Golden Gate Bridge shade as my transition shade on most days when I wanted a warm tone kind of look. It's more like a peachy neutral kind of shade, and I would often take that Primavera shade from Modern Renaissance and tap it on my lid, and sometimes I would use that Lorac shade and kind of really lightly deepen up my outer corner. Super easy look. Now one of these days I did that basic shape of look, but I used a turquoise liner in my waterline and did a little wing with it. Really ended up, I don't always feel comfortable in turquoise colors, but I ended up really liking that shade quite a bit. And then I have one, I can't believe I'm gonna show this one. I ended up trying a look that I really thought would be really cool, and I did not do it very well, but I'm gonna show you my fail because we all have fails, right? So what I ended up doing is I kind of took the Colourpop shade, put it kind of all over my lid. I really wanted to use that Lorac shade, that really deep dark Lorac shade, and use it as like a deepened like in the inner corner, and then a wing, or like kind of smoked out near my lash line. And I kind of thought like a smoky lash line, but then you put this pop of like bright Suva yellow liner on top, and like wing, almost like one flick, wing it out, and one flick in the inner corner. In my head, it was gonna look so cool, and I didn't have the right brush when I went to go put down that Suva liner. The brush ended up being too thick, and then it kind of made the liner look like it didn't go on smoothly, because I honestly, my fault, I used the wrong liner, and I think if I would have used the right liner brush, it would have been very cool. I may end up trying that look again one day, but in the footage, I think it looks pretty awful. But then again, it was a cool concept in my head. It was gonna look so kind of grungy and graphic and cool, but yeah, not my best look. Okay, now let's talk about some cool tone looks that I did with my Night and Day palette. I would start out with this as a transition shade. Honestly, this palette is so good. This transition shade in particular is one of my favorite go-to cool tone looks that I would, if I wasn't gonna do much, if I was gonna do like a graphic liner, which I'll show you on St. Patrick's Day, I ended up wearing that bright green Suva liner that I have, and I just put this very lightly into my crease, and then I really used that green liner to like be the statement of the look. Love that look so much. I also, because I love this palette in particular, especially this like duochrome shade down here, I did repeat, like I always, that's my go-to look with this palette, and I ended up using this palette for that look, and instead of like one of these in the outer corner, I did use the Lorac palette for it. I also used this shade to try out a Sydney Gray shadow that I just got sent to me from a friend. One of my friends sent me some makeup, and in those were these Sydney Grace liquid shadows, and I wanted to try to figure out how to wear these, so I ended up trying the shade Campfire all over my lid, and I used this shade again in my like transition area in my crease, just to kind of make sure that I knew how to blend it out. And I didn't until I did that look, I didn't realize how mauve-y this kind of can pull on me. Like it almost looked very purple, and then that shade was like very bronze and slightly almost green. Very cool shade. It's called Campfire, by the way. And of course I did some super neutral looks too with this in my crease. I used Sultry, that bronzy kind of shade, on my lid, really sheer, and then Lorac on the outer corner, kind of deepened it up. But I also tried that same look with different pops of color, so I wrote down some different ones. One day I did use my Suva green liner right in the inner corner as a pop, and you definitely saw me in a video with that look. A lot of people really liked it. I really love that bright green with that bronzy shade. Like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to wear more bronzes with like more pops of neon. I thought that was gorgeous, and I definitely want to try out some more of those. And then I also have one with the mini Tropic palette from Natasha Denona. I did end up putting the purple from that palette on my outer corner, but then I ended up grabbing the Lorac shade and putting it, let me grab it. So I used that as a transition shade. I used this on my outer corner a little bit, but then I decided I wanted it deeper and went over the top with the like Lorac shade, and I think it kind of lost a little bit of that purple. Then I did the bronze, and then in the inner corner, like I took this light blue shade down here in Mint Frost and put it like in my inner corner as a little pop, and I thought that was really pretty. I was very surprised and really happy that I could kind of use so many different light, cool tone pops of color with that bronze shade. Like again, that Sultry palette ends up being a lot more versatile than I give it credit for when you think about different colors that you can combine to like playfully have fun with some actual color in like unexpected ways. But yeah, I think that's long enough for today. I feel like this video is probably way longer than I expected or wanted it to be, so let's go ahead and wrap things up. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments what you think. New color story is very exciting, a little nervous for it, but be sure to wish me luck, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.